Hey everyone, I'm Bix, and welcome back to Bix Book Summary, the place where stories don't just inform us. They hold us, heal us, and help us understand ourselves a little better. Today we're continuing our Healing from Trauma series with a book that didn't just give me knowledge, it gave me language for things I had always felt but could never quite explain. We're talking about The Deepest Well by Dr. Nadine Burke Harris. And let me tell you, this book isn't just a read. It's an experience. It's one of those books that gently takes you by the hand and walks you back through your own childhood, not to dwell or rehash, but to understand, to finally name what you've carried in silence. Because what happens to us in childhood doesn't just fade with time, it lingers. It imprints itself on our immune system, on how we cope with stress, on how safe we feel in the world, and even on how long we live. This one hit me deep. Some of you already know parts of my story. I was just 3 when I was sent to live with my maternal grandparents. It wasn't out of neglect or lack of love, it was actually the opposite. My parents wanted me to get the best education possible, and at the time, there weren't good schools near our home. But that choice, even if made from love, came with its own silent cost. Growing up without my parents' everyday presence left this soft, dull ache in me. I didn't know how to name it back then. I just knew something always felt a little incomplete. Fast forward to high school. Our family's business collapsed, and the life we had known just disappeared. We went from a place of stability to financial uncertainty almost overnight. And even though my parents did everything they could to make sure I stayed in school, that I kept studying, kept climbing, I was carrying something else inside. I was learning how to survive, how to push through, how to smile even when I didn't feel okay. But I wasn't learning how to rest, or how to feel, or how to be soft in a world that felt sharp. So when I picked up this book, it was like holding a mirror. Dr. Burke Harris introduced me to a term that shifted my whole understanding of myself. ACEs, childhood experiences. These are things like divorce, abuse, neglect, growing up in a household with mental illness or substance abuse, or where there's violence, instability, or deep emotional absence. And here's the thing, these experiences don't just shape our memories, they shape our biology. They change how our brain develops, how our stress response works, how likely we are to suffer from chronic disease, addiction, depression, or even early death. But here's what makes this book so powerful. It's not just the science, it's the soul behind the science. Because Dr. Burke Harris isn't just some doctor in a lab coat. She's a listener, a witness, a woman who stumbled into this research simply by paying attention, by noticing the patterns in her young patients that no one else seemed willing to talk about. Kids with asthma, ADHD, stomach issues, behavioral struggles, not just random symptoms, but signs of something deeper, something systemic, something painful. And she tells us, this isn't about shame. It's not about pointing fingers at parents or trying to rewrite the past. It's about naming what happened. Because when we can name it, we can start to unpack it. We can start to heal, and we can stop passing it down to the next generation. That's what this video and this whole series is about. It's for anyone who's ever sat alone and thought, why do I feel like this? Why is it so hard to trust someone? Why do I tense up even when I know I'm safe? Why do I keep going back to survival mode even when my life no longer demands it? If you've ever asked those questions, you're not broken, you're not weak, you're human, and your body remembers. But here's the hope. Healing is real. It's possible. It's within reach. So stick with me because we're about to go deeper. Into the science of ACEs, into the hidden wounds many of us carry, and most importantly, into the light at the end of that tunnel. In medicine, we often imagine breakthroughs happening under microscopes in high-tech labs or through years of drug development. But sometimes, a breakthrough begins with a simple question, a question no one thought to ask before. And that's exactly how the ACEs study came to life. A study that didn't just change the course of pediatric care, it changed the way we understand trauma, health, and human resilience. In The Deepest Well, Dr. Nadine Burke Harris doesn't present the ACEs study as dry research or just a chart of statistics. She breathes life into it. She paints it as the revelation it truly was, a discovery that helped her connect the dots between the invisible wounds of childhood and the very visible suffering in the bodies of her patients. This groundbreaking study, ACEs, short for Adverse Childhood Experiences, was led in the 1990s by two forward-thinking doctors, Dr. Vincent Felitti and Dr. Robert Anda. They worked with over 17,000 patients, asking them not about their cholesterol levels or exercise habits, but about their childhoods. Questions that were piercing in their simplicity and weight. Had someone in your home screamed at you, belittled you, or made you feel like you didn't matter? Did you ever feel unloved or emotionally neglected? Did you live with someone who was struggling with mental illness or substance abuse? Did your parents divorce or separate? 10 questions. 10 moments from childhood that most people never say out loud. 10 truths that many had buried deep just to survive. And what they uncovered was shocking. There was a direct, measurable link between the number of ACEs a person had and their risk for a whole range of health issues. Not just mental, but physical. People with higher ACE scores were more likely to suffer from depression, anxiety, chronic illnesses like diabetes and heart disease, autoimmune conditions, and even cancer. It turned out that trauma doesn't just affect your mind, it alters your biology. It rewires how your brain handles stress. It impacts hormone levels, immune function, even how your cells age. In other words, trauma lives in the body. Children coming in with asthma that no inhaler could soothe. Teens with migraines, stomach aches, or chronic fatigue, but no lab tests ever showed anything wrong. And yet, she knew something was wrong, because their bodies were reacting to a sense of danger they couldn't explain, a stress response that had been switched on in childhood and never turned off. When she began asking her patients ACEs questions during checkups, what she found was undeniable. These kids weren't just dealing with random illnesses. They were carrying unspoken pain, and their bodies were manifesting it in the only way they could, through symptoms. Reading this part of the book hit me with a kind of emotional clarity. I've always known my past shaped how I feel, but it never occurred to me that it could also shape how my body functions. That the stress I learned to live with might have changed my biology. That my body had been trying to keep me alive by staying in survival mode, even long after the danger had passed. That's why this study matters, because it gives us the missing link between childhood trauma and lifelong health. It shows us that people who struggle later in life aren't weak or overreacting. They're responding exactly as a body would when it's been primed to protect itself at all costs. And once you know that, once you really understand it, there's this powerful shift. You stop blaming yourself. You start seeing your story through a lens of compassion, not shame. The ACEs study wasn't created to diagnose or label people as damaged. It was designed to understand where pain begins, and from that place of understanding, to begin healing. Coming up next, toxic stress, how the body breaks down when safety is missing. Because knowing what causes the damage is just the beginning. Now we dive into what happens inside us when we're always on alert, and how we can start to come back to safety. Imagine this for a moment. You're a child again. But instead of feeling safe in your home, instead of your body being at ease, you're constantly on high alert. You never quite know when someone might raise their voice, slam a door, or say something that makes you shrink inside. You don't even need a reason anymore. Your body is already bracing, just in case. Bracing for something to go wrong, for the silence, for the chaos, for whatever's coming next. That's what Dr. Burke Harris calls toxic stress. And it's not just emotional, it's biological. It's one of the most harmful effects of childhood adversity, and yet so many of us lived through it without ever knowing what it was or what it was doing to us. In The Deepest Well, Dr. Burke Harris makes something very clear. Not all stress is bad. In fact, some stress is actually helpful. That quick rush before a big test or a job interview, that's positive stress. It sharpens our focus. It helps us adapt and respond to challenges. Even more serious stress, like grieving a loss or dealing with a tough move, can be managed if there's a sense of love, safety, and support to hold us through it. That's tolerable stress. But toxic stress is a whole different story. Toxic stress happens when the pressure doesn't stop, when it's chronic, when it's unpredictable, when there's no caring adult to help you make sense of the chaos. It's when your home isn't a safe place, when love feels conditional or absent, when the very people meant to protect you become the ones you fear or can't rely on. It's waking up every day not knowing whether someone's going to yell or shut down or leave again. It's learning to stay quiet, to stay small, to make yourself invisible, because maybe, just maybe, that will keep you safe. And what's so heartbreaking is this: our bodies weren't built to live in this state all the time. The stress response system is designed to help us survive short bursts of danger. But when it's always activated, it starts to wear us down. When toxic stress kicks in, your body starts flooding with hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate climbs, your muscles stay tight, your digestion slows, your immune system falters, and your brain, especially the parts that manage memory, emotion, and decision-making, gets overwhelmed. Over time, this wear and tear doesn't just affect how we feel, it affects how we function. Dr. Burke Harris saw this in her patients. Children with stomach aches no doctor could explain. Teens who couldn't sleep, couldn't focus, couldn't relax. Adults who carried anxiety, chronic illness, or fatigue that had followed them from childhood into every stage of their lives. And the most striking part, these symptoms weren't just psychological, they were physiological. Their bodies had learned to stay in survival mode, even when the danger was long gone. Reading this helped me understand so much about myself. Why I used to overanalyze every conversation. Why rest felt almost unsafe. Why my body always seemed to carry this quiet tension, especially in my shoulders or chest. It wasn't laziness or oversensitivity or weakness. It was my body doing what it had learned to do: protect me, keep me ready, keep me alert. And this is the painful truth of toxic stress. The danger might end, but your body doesn't always get the memo. It keeps responding as if the threat is still there. But here's where the deepest well brings in hope. Because even though toxic stress can have lasting effects, it doesn't define us. The brain can heal, the body can rewire. With the right support, with safety, with understanding and care, we can begin to teach our nervous system something new. We can learn that we're not in danger anymore. We can finally exhale. That's what makes this book more than just a study in trauma. It's a guide toward healing. And in the next segment, we're going to see how Dr. Burke Harris turned all of this knowledge into action. How she began to shift the way she treated her patients, and how her approach can shift the way we care for ourselves and each other. Sometimes, the most painful parts of our past aren't the loud moments. They're not the shouting, the slamming doors, or the dramatic scenes. They're the quiet spaces we never filled, the questions we never asked because we were scared of the answers, the emotions we buried because they felt too big, too confusing, or too inconvenient. They're the silent decisions we made as kids, to stay quiet, to stay strong, to not make things worse. And for many of us, those moments became the blueprint for how we lived. In The Deepest Well, Dr. Nadine Burke Harris helps us see what so many of us missed growing up. That healing doesn't begin with perfection or with pretending everything's fine. It begins when we stop pretending it didn't happen. Once she understood the weight of ACEs and the science behind toxic stress, she couldn't go back to business as usual. Prescribing an inhaler for asthma or sending a teen home with a referral for therapy wasn't enough anymore, because beneath the surface symptoms, there were deeper wounds. She started asking different questions, not complicated, clinical ones, but real, human ones. Has something scary or difficult happened to you recently? Has anyone ever made you feel unsafe? And what happened next changed everything. Because once children, once anyone, felt seen, once they were given space to speak the truth without fear or shame, something inside them began to shift. They stopped being just a list of symptoms on a chart. They became stories, whole stories. And those stories, when spoken out loud, began the process of healing. Dr. Burke Harris reminds us that silence might feel protective, but in reality, it only protects the pain. When we speak the truth, especially the hard, buried, vulnerable truths, we begin to loosen pain's grip. We make space for something new. This really hit home for me. For so long, I carried unspoken things. Being sent away at age 3. Feeling loved, yes, but not always understood. The pressure to keep it together when things were falling apart at home. The quiet belief that I had to be the strong one, no matter how tired I was inside. I didn't have words for that when I was younger. I didn't even know those moments mattered. I thought if I pushed them away long enough, they'd disappear. But they didn't. They lived in my body, in my need to stay hyper-aware, in the way I struggled to fully rest or trust or just be. I didn't realize that what I had experienced was something my body remembered, even when my mind had tried to forget. And it wasn't until I began to speak, first to myself, then to a therapist, and yes, even through books like this one, that I felt something begin to soften. That I understood the real power of giving a name to what happened. Because when you name your pain, you claim your power. You're no longer just reacting, you're understanding. You're witnessing your own story and realizing, I make sense. I'm not broken. I survived something hard, and my body responded exactly the way it was supposed to. But now, I get to choose how the next chapter goes. That's the movement Dr. Burke Harris sparked. She didn't stop with the data. She started changing the system, encouraging doctors, teachers, caregivers, entire communities to stop asking, what's wrong with you? And start asking, what happened to you? Not to keep people stuck in their past, but to finally bring that pain into the light. Because healing doesn't happen in hiding. It happens when we're seen. So if you're watching this, and there's something you've never said out loud, something that still lingers in the background of your life, please know this, your story matters. It matters even if it's complicated, even if it's still unfolding, even if no one ever asked before. You deserve to speak it, and you deserve to heal. Coming up next, building resilience, how connection and care begin to heal toxic stress. Because healing is not just possible, it begins with love, safety, and the power of being held through it all. Up until now, we've walked through some heavy, deeply personal truths. How adversity in childhood doesn't just fade with time, but can echo through our health, our relationships, and even our sense of self. But here's where the deepest well begins to shift. Here's where the hope comes in. Dr. Nadine Burke Harris reminds us of something we all need to hear. Our biology is not our destiny. And that single truth, that's where the light breaks through the darkness. Yes, toxic stress can leave its mark. Yes, trauma can alter the nervous system, the immune response, the very way our brain is wired to respond to the world. But the body, your body, is always trying to return to safety. The brain is always seeking peace. The nervous system wants to settle. And most importantly, healing isn't something we're meant to do alone. Healing begins in connection. What Dr. Burke Harris found through her work was astonishing, yet beautifully simple. Children with high ACE scores, kids who had every reason to struggle, began to thrive when they had strong, supportive relationships. Not perfect relationships. Not a flawless home. Just one steady, nurturing adult. A parent, a teacher, a coach, a neighbor. Someone who consistently showed up. Someone who said with their presence, you matter. You are not alone. You are safe now. That relationship becomes more than love. It becomes regulation. It becomes safety in action. A lifeline to a child's overworked nervous system that says, you don't have to be on guard anymore. And science backs this up. When we feel safe and supported, cortisol levels drop. The brain begins to heal. Sleep improves. Focus returns. The body shifts from surviving to living. That's what resilience looks like. Not bouncing back like nothing ever happened, but growing through what happened and finding new strength on the other side. And this doesn't just apply to kids. Adults can heal too. Many of us didn't have that safe relationship growing up. Many of us are only now, years later, beginning to touch the grief we buried or the patterns we formed to protect ourselves. But it's not too late. The same things that help children heal, connection, safety, care, help us too. For some, it starts in a therapist's office. For others, through mindfulness, or movement, or prayer, or creativity. For many, it begins with a book like this, with understanding our past in a new light. With hearing someone say, what happened to you matters, and you are not broken. This part of the book resonated so deeply with me, because I'm still healing. I'm still learning what safety feels like in my own body. I'm still figuring out how to trust fully, how to relax into love, how to rest without guilt. And I've come to see resilience not as pretending I've got it all together, but as having the courage to keep showing up, to keep learning, to keep reaching out when I need help, and to accept that that is enough. So if you've ever believed that your trauma defines you, I want you to know, it doesn't. Yes, it shaped you. Yes, it changed some things, but it's not all of you. It's not the whole story. Your brain can rewire, your body can recalibrate, And with support, with love, with patience, with community, you can begin again. We've come to the end of this heartfelt and eye-opening journey through the deepest well, but truly it's not an end at all. It's the start of something deeper, something that doesn't begin or end with a book summary, but lives inside the quiet daily practice of coming home to yourself. Dr. Nadine Burke Harris doesn't wrap things up with perfect solutions or tidy answers. Instead, she gives us something far more meaningful. She gives us understanding. She gives us language. She gives us hope. Hope that if your childhood was marked by fear, instability, or silence, your future doesn't have to echo the same. Hope that if your body has carried pain for years without knowing why, that pain can finally begin to soften. And hope that if you never had someone to hold space for you as a child, you can become that person for yourself now, or find others who will. This book changed the way I look at myself. It helped me reconnect the pieces of my story. The boy who was sent away at 3, who tried so hard to be strong, who watched his family lose everything, and kept smiling like it was all okay. And the man I'm becoming. The one who now has the tools, the words, the courage to stop surviving and start healing. Because that's the deepest message this book gives us. Healing is possible. It's not a fantasy or something reserved for people with perfect circumstances or the right support systems from the start. It's within reach for all of us. But it begins with something deceptively simple. Awareness. We start by telling the truth, by naming what happened, by being honest, even just with ourselves. And then piece by piece, we begin to build something new. Healthier patterns, safer relationships, a softer inner voice. All of it teaches our bodies, slowly and gently, a new truth. You're safe now. You don't have to work endlessly to prove your worth. You don't have to keep shrinking to be accepted. And you definitely don't have to carry the pain that was never yours to begin with. If you've made it this far and any part of the story feels like your own, I just want you to know you are not alone. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're already doing the work, just by being here, just by listening, just by remembering, and maybe, for the first time, believing that healing is possible for you too. Thank you for being here with me on this episode of Healing from Trauma, a book journey with Bix. It means the world that you chose to share this space, this story, and this path with me. I'm so proud of us for choosing to feel, to learn, to grow, even when it's hard. If this video touched something inside you, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps this message reach more people who might be on their own healing journey. And if you're ready to take this exploration even further, check out the link in the description to grab your own copy of The Deepest Well. I promise, it's worth every page. And before you go, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and answer this. What's one thing you're healing from that you no longer want to carry in silence? Until next time, take care of your nervous system. Be gentle with your memories. And remember, you are healing, even on the days it doesn't feel like it. You're doing better than you think. I'm Bix, and I'll see you in the next chapter.